If you were to take a look at every Euroleague MVP winner since the award was handed out in 2005, you would see that almost all of these players have either played with or were drafted by an NBA team. And what's interesting here is how intrigued NBA teams are about these players, yet the players have a tendency to not really care about playing in the NBA, contrary to what many would expect. And so, knowing this, the most recent Euroleague MVP who decided to make his way over to America at the beginning of the 2024 NBA season is clearly not coming to America to be anyone's puppet. He's in the NBA to win and do so playing his own very unique brand of basketball, and based on what we've seen, he should be in the NBA to stay. However, success in the NBA, especially with foreigners, is very difficult to predict. And after all, there have been plenty of stories of Euroleague players and even MVPs who failed in the NBA, and many that do actually succeed don't even end up staying in the NBA. And so, does the Euroleague's most recent chosen one even have a chance at sticking in the NBA? What's been made very clear by many of the Euroleague stars we've seen transfer their talent over to the US is that playing in the NBA is not the ultimate goal for many of these guys. Just like all players, they're looking for not just money, but also the opportunity to play basketball and have a fun time doing so. If they don't get their needs met, it's an easy choice for them to just go back home and continue making millions playing basketball in Europe. Over the years, NBA teams have come to realize this reality that they can't escape with many of these Euroleague players, and so the Sacramento Kings learned from the mistakes of NBA teams in the past with their signing this last summer of Bulgarian forward Sasha Vezenkov, who, despite being the 57th pick all the way back in the 2017 NBA draft, the Kings signed Vezenkov on a 3-year deal worth $20 million. And that might be the highest any second-round pick has ever been paid in their first contract in NBA history, which goes to show how much the Kings value Vezenkov. And what is not to value? The 6'9" swingman made himself known as not just the most valuable European basketball player this past summer, but if you go and watch his highlights over the years, and in particular his MVP season, something very odd about the way he plays begins to take you by surprise.
The end of 40. Walk up back on the floor. Ovechkov squared him, moves sideways, and he gets it.
20 points and 10 boards. And they close it out. The answer is yes, as Sasha Vezenkov.
Slow the game down, get it back to some kind of control for Olympiacos. It's Vezenkov. Oh!
The lead for Olympiacos is short-lived. Dorsey. Vezenkov. Back-to-back threes. Sasha Vezenkov.
Now, in case you didn't catch it, Sasha Vezenkov appears to have some sort of an aversion to dribbling the basketball. In fact, throughout a stretch of games last season where Vezenkov scored a total of 275 points, he dribbled the basketball a total of 26 times to get those points, meaning he scored 10.6 points per dribble throughout that run, where in plenty of games he didn't dribble the ball a single time. And keep in mind, this is not only the Euroleague MVP we're talking about, but he brought home the scoring title of the Euroleague while playing almost entirely off ball. And if you're an NBA fan, this fact just doesn't sit right, because when you look at not just the top scorers in the NBA, who we all know are extremely ball dominant and ISO heavy in their playstyles, but also the MVPs of the NBA are as well. If you look at the top 5 MVP vote getters last season, every single one of them were extremely ball dominant, with all 5 players being in the top 6 league-wide in usage rate that season. And so when you have a player who's able to make his impact felt better than any other European player and lead the league in scoring while at the same time requiring very few touches, that kind of a player was just built for the modern NBA. And it's no wonder why the Kings are treating him so well in comparison to some Euroleague players of the past who didn't quite get that same treatment, as it was throughout this very run by Vezenkov last season where the Kings began to realize that this at once forgotten late second round pick might just be a potential key piece for the Kings' future as a playoff contending team. Because in addition to being a player who doesn't need the ball in his hands to contribute to winning basketball, Vezenkov's skill set perfectly suits what teams are currently looking for in the NBA. In his MVP season, he shot about 38% from 3 on 5 attempts. Now, that doesn't sound too crazy, but remember, Euroleague courts are a lot smaller than NBA courts, and it's much more common for teams in the Euroleague to not have 4 or 5 players that can space the floor on the court at all times. Both of these these factors make spacing in the Euroleague a lot worse, and not to mention, defensive intensity in the regular season is much higher in the Euroleague than it is in the NBA. This is why, of the 14 players who took more threes per game than Vezenkov in the Euroleague last season, only 2 of those players actually shot a better percentage than him from 3. However, Sasha's off-ball movement is more important to his individual impact than any other part of his game. A large part of why Vezenkov has been known to be such an efficient player is because he gets himself open and is constantly moving without the ball. And that's not limited to outside shooting. Last season in the Euroleague, Vezenkov made a whopping 65.5% of his shots inside the three-point line. No other player who took as many threes as him made above 54% of their two-point shots, meaning it's pretty safe to say this level of efficiency and off-ball movement should make for a seamless transition to the NBA, where every team would get down on their knees and beg for a low-usage floor spacer just like him. However, it's never easy to predict how a EuroLeague player, even if they're amazing in Europe, will go on to play in the NBA. In fact, with many recent examples, it'd be understandable for NBA fans to doubt that a EuroLeague player has any real shot of having a similar impact on the west side of the Atlantic as they had on the east. For example, Facundo Campazzo first got a chance to play in the NBA at 28 years old with the Denver Nuggets back in 2020, and despite having the second highest assist average for a career in EuroLeague history, he barely lasted 2 years in the NBA. EuroLeague legend Rudy Fernandez was also thought to be the next big thing out of Spain when he was drafted 24th overall in the 2007 NBA draft. However, he only played a mediocre 4 seasons in the NBA. Milos Teodosic won the EuroLeague MVP back in 2010, and 7 years later at age 30, he finally made his way over to the NBA where he played just 60 games. Now, this all might look bad, and to most NBA fans, the chances probably don't look good for even top EuroLeague stars in terms of bringing their productivity over to the NBA. But something us NBA fans have to consider is just how many of these players were actually very good throughout their time in the NBA, but their careers didn't quite go according to plan, not because they weren't good, but they weren't really valued like they should have been. Juan Carlos Navarro, the 2009 EuroLeague MVP, he played just 1 season with the Grizzlies in 2008 and played pretty well, but his salary was only about $500,000, which wasn't going to be enough for him, so he left after 1 year. Milos Teodosic, the 2010 EuroLeague MVP, he joined the Clippers in 2017 and actually got paid fairly well at $12 million for 2 years, and he put up pretty solid numbers in his first season. But he was waived 15 games into his second season where he barely even saw the floor. Many of these EuroLeague stars made the move over to the NBA, and the ones who got real time on the court were very solid contributors. And so, what does all of this have to say for Sasha Vezenkov, who, as we mentioned, is currently playing his first NBA season for the Sacramento Kings? Well, we've gotten a glimpse into what Vezenkov's game will look like in an NBA setting, and his style of play appears to match very well with the kind of players that do happen to have the most amount of success in the NBA. Anthony Parker, Luka Doncic, Andrei Kirilenko, Nikola Mirotic, Simone Fontecchio. These bigger wings tend to find much more success at the NBA level than their shorter counterparts and stick around for quite some time. What works in the EuroLeague doesn't always work in the NBA and vice versa. As an example, Kemba Walker, former NBA star who many would at least expect to be a good role player in the EuroLeague, the now 33-year-old signed a EuroLeague contract for the 2024 season, and throughout 14 games so far, he's averaging a whopping 4 points on 33% shooting. And in the same exact way, some players can dominate in the EuroLeague but find little to no success in the NBA. And as for Sasha Vezenkov himself, his unique play style appears to be one that does actually work in the NBA. He's currently putting up just 5 points on decent shooting in about 12 minutes of play, so the numbers haven't jumped off the page. However, he's clearly done a good job with the minutes he's been getting. And although the production hasn't ramped up quite yet, what we're actually seeing him do during his time on the court for now is promising for his future. The things that made him such a highly valued NBA prospect are still very much there at the NBA level. The quick trigger from 3, the ability to shoot from 30 feet out and with the defender right in his grill, the movement without the ball and sense to identify open space, and the heads-up plays he's been known to make for his teammates. It looks like Sasha Vezenkov is on his way to becoming a very productive NBA role player as he fits the mold of what has made many other EuroLeague stars good in the NBA. Now, there are concerns, especially defensively, and what's kept many European players from sticking in the NBA has been their inability ability to defend NBA level players, and Vezenkov doesn't have a lot of experience guarding the hyper athletes that NBA has to offer. But assuming he figures that out at least a little bit, there is good reason to believe that he'll become an example of a EuroLeague star who did make it in the NBA. But let me know your thoughts. Is Sasha Vezenkov here to stay in the NBA, and should NBA teams learn from their past mistakes and value EuroLeague players more than they have in years past? Thank you all for watching, hope you all enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next one.